Hello and welcome back to Enlighten Us, your easy path to learning Arabic. You are joining us today for lesson 19 and we are looking at the passive for the present tense. الفعل المبني للمجهول المضارع. In previous lessons, we've looked at الفعل المبني للمعلوم, the fi'l, the verb that is built on the known. Take this sentence for instance, تأكل البقرة, the cow is eating. We know who is taking the action. We know what the action is, eating, and we know who is taking the action, the cow. In English, we would call this active. Let's compare that to today's focus. الفعل المبني للمجهول, the fi'l or the verb المبني that is built on the unknown. Let's consider this sentence. تؤكل البقرة, the cow is being eaten. So we know what the action is, it's still eating, but we don't know who is taking the action. We know what is being eaten, but not who is doing the eating. Hence, because it's unknown, للمجهول, the unknown. But how do we move from the active to the passive? Well, let's have a look at the breakdown of the process. So as you can see, we've gone from تأكل to تؤكل. Well, in terms of the process, first things first, give the first letter a dhamma. Give the second to last letter a fatha. Any other preceding letters, so any other letters before the second to last letter, unless they have a sukoon, also get a fatha. And the last letter, there's no chain. Let's take a closer look at this one to see if that's what's happened. So if you remember our first step, the first letter gets a dhamma. So you can see here the ta has relinquished its fatha and instead adopted a dhamma. The second to last give a fatha. Well, the second to last is the kaf. And again, it's relinquished the dhamma, in this case, in favour of the fatha. And this is greyed out because any other preceding letters also give a dhamma. We do have the preceding letter, we have the alif or the hamza, but it has a sukoon, so we leave it alone. It stays the same. And then the last letter, that's our lam. There's no change. There's one thing to note here when we're talking about the last letter and then working backwards, the second to last, etc. We're talking about the root letters only. We would ignore, for instance, una, ina, ani, because these letters are not part of the root. Rather, these suffixes denote the pronoun. So when we're talking about the last letter or the second to last letter, we are talking about the root letters only. Right. Before we look at the entire passive chart, let's remind ourselves of the active. So we have huwa يأكل, هما يأكلان, هم يأكلون, هي تأكل, هما تأكلان, هن يأكلن, أنت تأكل, أنتما تأكلان, أنتم تأكلون, أنت تأكلين, أنتما تأكلان, أنتن تأكلن, أنا آكل, نحن نأكل, نحن نأكل. Now let's have a look at how this transforms. Right, let's get to it. هو يؤكل, هما يؤكلان, هم يؤكلون, هي تؤكل, هما تؤكلان, هن يؤكلن, أنت تؤكل, أنتما تؤكلان, أنتم تؤكلون, أنت تؤكلين, أنتما تؤكلان, أنتن تؤكلن, أنا أوكل, نحن نؤكل, نحن نؤكل. We have reached the end of the lesson, and as become customary, let's have a mulakhas, let's have a summary. Now, of course, we've been looking at the passive present tense. We've been looking at the process of changing an active present tense verb to a passive one. So the first step, give the first letter a dhamma. The second step, second to last letter gets a fatha. Any other preceding letters also get a fatha, as we saw, unless they have a sukun. And lastly, there's no change to the last letter. And we emphasised that when you're identifying the last letter and then working backwards to then identify the second to last letter, we are only considering the root letter. So we're ignoring the suffixes that pertain to the pronoun, that give us who the doer is.